Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Um, Next topic that we are going to cover in global marketing is culture. Okay. Now, culture is a very important thing. It doesn't seem like that, but the problem is that culture is probably the most important thing when we talk about expansion into another country or carrying out international or global operations. Then culture is definitely a very important thing. It is important in two aspects. Okay, first aspect is that when you are looking at which countries to expand into, then the countries that are closest to your country's culture, okay, or the cultures are similar or are closer, okay, and we have something called cultural distance is lower, then that is where you can expand quickly, okay, because you would be able to adapt very quickly to the social situations. Okay, secondly, uh, um, this is what we look at in terms of analysis. And secondly, if you're placing your operations there, then obviously your operations have to take care of the local culture, the norms, traditions, because that is when it will become successful. Okay, if it is not taking care of local norms and local traditions and local cultural elements, then obviously there is going to be a problem. Okay, and we've got many cases many cases that you can look at. Okay, the most famous cases of McDonald's in India, where they started with obviously in America and Europe you have beef burgers, but if you take beef burgers and launch that in India, and especially well, even in the 90s when there was the aura of liberalism there. Okay, but now if you now think about the situation now, that if you launch beef burgers or something like that there, it's going to get really messy for the company. Okay, anyway, so culture is something that has to be considered very important, and we have to give a lot of it, we should be giving a lot of attention to it when we're looking at our from the global marketing perspective. Okay, so at every point in analysis, culture has to be taken care of. Okay, now, when we talk about culture, culture can have, we can classify in many different ways. Okay, for example, if you think about it, the basic general classification would be based on regions. That you have regional culture, you can have regions of the world, you can have bigger groups, like for example we call as Western culture, we can call as Eastern culture, we can call as Middle Eastern culture, we can call as culture of the subcontinent. Okay, so these would be the general big groups if you talk about, and obviously the countries that are lying in these will have less cultural distances. Okay, but there are other ways of classifying cultures as well. For example, one classification given here, we have low context cultures and high context cultures. Okay, in low context cultures, we have the context is not considered important, like who's talking to who, what is your position, status, and things in society. They are not considered important. People can communicate easily and can interact easily with each another. You can look at Western cultures are considered low context culture. As opposed to that, we've got high context culture, where the person, his position in the family, his position in the society, his social status, his official status, the amount of authority that he has, okay, will create a lot of distance between individuals. And if you have to talk to these people, you have to take care of the context, in which what context you're talking about, how do you get access to these people. Okay, then who's saying what, okay, and what is the status of that person. Okay, so these are high context cultures. And generally, if you talk about, when we talk about our Eastern cultures, uh, are are generally high context. Okay, but whatever the classification, what we need to do is we need to understand the elements of culture. Okay, probably you have taken this in the course on sociology, but just a repetition. It's not, won't be a repetition, but just from the focus of how do you do business, and what are the things that of the cultural elements, and how do they actually impact the way do you business in different countries. Because this is our perspective that we are going to be talking about. Okay, so in the elements of culture, we have these different elements that are there. We've got religion, values and attitudes, manners and customs, material elements, aesthetics, and language. Okay, now all of these elements are important, and these elements make up a culture. Okay, so these elements combine together to formulate a culture. Yes, out of these elements, some are more dominant. For example, when you talk about religion, or we talk about material elements, or aesthetics, these are more dominant. And some are, like, there is some debate about it. Like when we talk say language, some researchers say that language is a separate element, and some say no, language is a reflection of all of these elements of the culture. So whatever the thing practically, it's the same. Language is, yes, definitely important, and language will convey all of the elements of culture that are there. Now, we look at these elements because based on that we will be able to understand that culture. Okay, this is a framework that will make it easier for this is a, what you say, template us to uh, uh, for us to understand different cultures in an organized manner. Okay, otherwise if you go into the past, or even now, when we have to do detailed studies, so we have something called ethnographic studies that have to be done, where the researchers has to embed into the culture. They have to live with them, and they have to look at their customs and everything, and in detail. So that is something that obviously is more for other purposes. But when we talk about having a basic framework, especially in the context of business, then we have these elements. This particular framework that we have in terms of the elements of culture is a very good and organized way of understanding different cultures. Okay. Okay, so let's now go into one by one into all of these. I'll just define it here, and you can look at the subsequent slides. And if you have, we'll cover that afterwards. We'll have certain other lectures posted on it, detailed lecture. But at this point in time, I'll just give a brief overview of the elements of culture, and then in detail we'll have other things, other videos might be posted in the future. Okay, but if you do have any questions, look at all the slides, and if you do have any questions, then please send these questions to me, and I'll be glad to answer all of them. Okay, in elements of culture, the first one, which probably is the most dominant one, is religion. Now, if you look at religion uh, at this point in time, from a secular definition, is defined as a set of beliefs held by an individual or a group of people. Okay, and but this is what we talk about the religions, that this is what religion is by definition. But is it like that? But there are obviously, to the contrary, there are lots of other conceptualizations and the totally contrary views that religion has a lot of impact on practical life. But the secular definition basically bottles up the religion into a very limited space, which is just individual or maybe few people, but there it doesn't have an impact on public life. Okay, that's what they want to project with the secular definition. But obviously, there are probably more people in the world who have a different opinion about it. They say no, religion, even historically and even now in most of the parts of the world, does have a major impact on the practical life. Okay, you cannot avoid it. Okay, even the countries that you go to, that you that we consider as irreligious or secular. Okay, how can you take out the religious buildings from the landscapes? Okay, you go into the cities, you'll still find their churches, their synagogues, their temples, their masajid. You will still find that. Okay, you cannot take that out of the social impact of religion and the practical aspects of religion, okay, that have an impact on society. Anyway, so religion is something, but obviously religion historically has had is probably the most key element that has an impact on formulating culture. Okay, again, before going into detail, when we say culture, how is a culture formulated? A culture is formulated by two things. Okay, a culture is formulated by the interaction of people amongst themselves and the interaction of that group of people with the environment. Okay, so that's how a culture forms. And obviously, when you're interacting with each another, when you're interacting with environment, then religion is something that in in the opinion of some thinkers, it is a byproduct of these interactions. In some opinions, no, there is a it's something that you get or you already have or you develop, and that will then govern your interactions. Okay, so anyways, whatever the conceptualization is, but the religion is definitely the the probably the most important thing that you would have to look at when you're analyzing a culture. Okay. uh, Again, if you want an impact example of it, go back to McDonald's and beef burgers in India. Okay. Or alcohol in any Muslim country. Okay, alcohol, launching an alcohol brand in any Muslim country, you probably will get it. Okay, or anything. I mean, something in any other, be it Buddhist or Christian or okay, whatever is not liked in that religion. If you go and uh, try to like uh, sell those products and services, then you definitely will have a backlash from the society. Anyways, next thing is values and attitudes. Values and attitudes are, okay, this is coming from the continuum of behavior. That behavior forms attitudes forms norms, and uh, norms then become values. Okay, so you have to look at what are the values and attitudes that are culture. Okay, values are considered the highest or uh, uh, the best way of behavior. Okay, if I say the best way of behavior or something that is considered a normal and a good behavior in a society, these are called values. Okay, and they are formed by behavior are again, you start with with instances. You start with the stimuli. The response to stimuli forms behavior, and then when that behavior spreads and it becomes more established, then it's called attitude. Then attitude, when it becomes more established, it is called norms. That what is a normal reaction to something, to a certain stimuli or certain situation that you would face in the society, and that the best reaction in those, which again takes has a time frame. I mean, you have over a longer time frame and longer, and then acceptance by society. That becomes values. Okay. Third one is manners and customs. Okay, when we talk about manners and customs, we are actually more focused towards events. Okay, an event is something which is very important from the marketing context, because around events you do all your marketing. Okay? This is a very general understanding that we have in the marketing world, that around events you do your marketing. So, but how do you understand events? You understand events, cultural events, or events in the country, events that are based on the cultures that are existing in that country. uh, you look at the manners and customs. Okay, what sort of celebrations are being there, how are the celebrations being exhibited, what are the things that are happening, how are people behaving, and what are the attitudes that are exhibited in on those celebrations. Okay, so this is a general thing, but if you look at the concept of an event. Okay, when I say the concept of an, I'll just write it here a little to make it clearer. Okay, this is event. Okay, so if you look at event can be low frequency events and high frequency events. Low frequency events are your celebrations, like your yearly or yearly celebrations that might come, or celebrations that might come once in a lifetime, or maybe a few times in a lifetime. For example, if you look at the culture here that exists in the subcontinent, then if you look at the concept of marriage, you're probably supposed to get married only once in your life. So that is a lifetime event that happens once in life. Uh, it is supposed to happen once in life. This is the the cultural understanding or the cultural application of this. Or you can have yearly events, like you have yearly celebrations, like you have religious celebrations, like you have Eid, or you have Diwali, or you can have Christmas. Okay, or you have the Chinese New Year. Okay, so all of these are coming every year. Okay, or there are some social events. For example, somebody achieving something in life. For example, somebody completing education. Okay, that is normally supposed to happen maybe once or twice, depending on the level that you want to look at. okay, or somebody buying a new house, okay, or somebody buying a new car, okay, for the first time, or maybe two times or three, but depends, again, that depends on the social class of how, what is the frequency of events that is happening according to the social class, according to the buying power, according to the norms that are there in the subculture. Okay, so but at these, so these are low frequency events. Then we have very high frequency events that happen every day. For example, we have breakfast, we have lunch, we have dinner, okay, we might have supper, we might have a tea time, we might have maybe a meeting, we might have something like a class that happens multiple times in a day for a student and a teacher. So these or you could have traveling, that you are traveling every day in the morning or traveling then in the evening as well. And if you have multiple jobs that you're traveling multiple times in a day, so these are also events. And obviously the mannerisms that are exhibited in these events, these manners that are established, they become customary. Okay, okay, for example, if you are traveling um, and you encounter that you have an older person who wants to enter and you are entering, and then who is going to enter first? Okay, in obviously in eastern cultures, in the middle eastern culture, in the subcontinent culture, and even in the western culture, you would a young person would give space to the oldest person out of respect. Okay, out of respect, you would do that. Okay, should do that or would do that. Okay, so this is the manner that you exhibit when you're encountering this particular situation, and this is considered the normal thing in society. Okay, and then you have the customary things, like in events you have different customs that are there. For example, in marriage, okay, how would the bride behave, how would the groom behave, how would the mother and father behave, what would the things that will happen. Okay, then you have events that are created, that become established in the culture, so they become customs. Okay, then the third thing is material elements. Okay, what are the material elements that are associated in the culture, especially with respect to events, and especially with respect to the value, to attitudes and values and all of that. So what are the material elements? Okay, for example, if we talk about something like marriage, then what is the uh, how much materials will be exhibited? Okay, or let's say if you have a certain position, you have a certain authoritative position, then what is the how much possession of materials is considered important? Okay, uh, uh, for example, let's say if you are a working person and you've just started your job, then are you supposed to have your own car? Are you supposed to have your own house or something? Or if you have been working for 30 years or 40 years, then you will have certain material elements for you to remain acceptable in society, or to maintain the societal values and norms. You need to have certain material possessions that you need to have. Okay, for example, in many countries, again, we also talked about authority. For example, let's say if you are the member of the parliament, then how much materials are you supposed to have? Okay, that will change from culture to culture. For example, if you go to um, western cultures, okay, they would probably not exhibit that much. Okay, they may have, but they may not exhibit. Okay, at least they'll project themselves that they are normal guys, and probably coming in good cars, but maybe not too much of exuberance that they'll show. Okay, but in if you see some African culture or some eastern cultures, then you have big pomp and show, right? You have to show a lot of elements that probably that if you have a car and you have a motorcade that you're traveling in, okay, more cars following you, and this big thing that is happening, then that will be considered as something which is part of the material elements that goes with the authority. All of these presidents, prime ministers, and all of these MNEs and stuff, they are looking at it. And obviously, but this would change from culture. If you go to Singapore, for example, okay, one of the prime ministers in the past used to come on a bicycle to the office, used to use his car when he was in the office, and when he's going home, he's going back on a bicycle. Okay, so in that culture, material elements is not considered very important. Okay, now even from a marketing point of view, material elements are there, because when you are projecting some product, you're projecting some services, you're creating these ads, so related to the need satisfaction and the people who are fulfilling that need. Okay, you have to look at their mental maps, create their mental maps, and look at what their material elements are considered important to them, and you have to put those material elements into those ads, and put those or arrange for that material impression into those products and services. Okay. Okay, for example, let's say if you're getting a you get a new mobile phone. So a new mobile phone may not be only like 6 inches to 7 inches screen size, okay, but you'll have a big box for it, right? You'll have a big box for it. Why? Because it's heavy, it's expensive, right? So this is what the this is what the material element part of it is, that you are unboxings. You have boxes and boxes and boxes showing the thing, but it might be a smaller thing in size, but you're showing that it's something important, that it's coming in all of these paraphernalia that is put with it. Okay. Anyways, next is aesthetics. Okay, when you talk about aesthetics, aesthetics is defined as the concept of beauty and proportion, um, the concept of beauty and proportion that exists in a society and a culture. Okay, so when we talk about this proportion and beauty, then we have shapes, sizes, designs, colors. Okay, colors are quite important, and cultural manifestation of colors. Okay, for example, if you look at the Western culture and you see red, red means danger, stop. Okay, but if you go to Eastern cultures in China, for example, red means prosperity. It's something good. Okay, when you look at green color is something that you're has a green color shows prosperity in the Western and Middle Eastern and subcontinent cultures. But in the Eastern cultures, if you go to China, then green color, depending on the shade, might be trickery, deceit, or anything like that. That would be the connotation that goes with it. Okay, so colors are important. Shape, size, and designs. Cultures. Okay, go to America and you go in a small little Suzuki Alto, or a small little Suzuki whatever. Okay, will that be liked? Okay, probably not, because in America the bigger shapes, squarer sizes, designs, and big is considered bigger. So you have big cars there. But if you go to Japan and you take an American car, that will not be liked, because they like smaller, more efficient, smaller designs of things. Okay, shapes. Okay, shapes of things. Should it be round? Should it be in a box? Should it be rectangular? Should it be pointed? You go to Scandinavian culture, so they are more related to the concept of ice, and ice has edges, and you'll find that the buildings there, and that the things that you put up, the concept of edges and pointedness, all of that would be there. Okay, you come to the eastern side here, round things are considered important. Okay, or round designs. For example, if you look at the architecture buildings, and you will have arches and things like that, and you have domes, and even products. Okay, circular designs are probably considered better. Circular. Okay, if you go to the western, then boxes, squares. Okay, things that are in proportion, but in defined edges. Okay, defined edges and proportionate edges. Okay, like you look at American cars, they're near rectangles or boxes. Okay, even if you look at it culturally, and even if you look now, they would put in a design, but the basic design that would you would see, even with the curves and contours, but the basic design, the box or the rectangle will be very clear. Okay, anyway, so this is about aesthetics. Language, as we've already talked about, language can be is it is well, I agree with the opinion that language is is a representation of the culture, of all these cultural elements. Language is a representation. It actually reflects all of these elements. Okay, for example, in language, you go to different countries, you find different things. For example, how do you greet? Okay, um, should you be mentioning God when you're greeting? Okay, or you should not be mentioning God when you're greeting. You should not have any let's say if you go to Australia, then you say what's up, hi, or what's happening. So they've taken out all the religious, or even in America, or even in Britain. Okay, so they say cheers or some things like that. So they've taken out all the religious connotations to it, of greeting. Okay, but if you go to subcontinent or Middle Eastern cultures, then you are always mentioning God all the time. For example, even In India, you are saying namaste, so that has is a religious word. Okay. Obviously, in Middle East, when you're talking about Islam, you say assalamu alaikum, so that also is relating things to God. Okay, so this is this is coming into the language, and you can see that in the language, and all of these elements are reflected in the language. Okay, good. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please send them to me, and I'll be very happy to reply. Okay, have a nice day.